Look, I tried to make an unpopular opinions video for Zelda, and I did. It's right here. But frankly, I just don't have that many unpopular opinions concerning the franchise. Others, however... oh no. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice, and today I have a little bit of a different kind of video. I was inspired by the channel called Crossing's channel, which did a video where he read and responded to a plethora of different unpopular opinions about Animal Crossing. Actually, I think he did a couple of videos like this. I found that kind of interesting, so I reached out on my community tab on YouTube, Instagram, and Discord, and I was flooded with tons of different responses. Y'all have quite the array of, I guess it's also called hot takes when it comes to Zelda, and it was quite interesting to read. A couple of notes first. I was shocked at how many responses I got, so therefore I'm not going to be reading every single one of them. However, if you do enjoy this video and you'd like to see more, whether it's continuing on Zelda or a different topic, then just let me know in the comment section below. I'm interested to see people's feedback in response to this kind of video. My other note is I did specifically ask that people be kind and respectful with their comments, and several did not meet that criteria. In fact, any comment that included the phrase, "You're not a real Zelda fan if..." was automatically discounted. Such comments are based solely in ignorance and pessimism. There are varying levels to being a fan of something, and just because someone doesn't have maybe as much knowledge about the fandom as you doesn't make them less of a fan, or not at all a fan, and just because they might really like a part of the franchise that you specifically hate also does not discredit them as being a fan. For example, I'm a super fan of How to Train Your Dragon, but a casual fan of Lord of the Rings. I'm a fan of both, but in a different way. I know almost everything there is to know about the How to Train Your Dragon lore and universe, but if someone only likes the movies or even just enjoyed a couple of the movies, not even all three, but they still consider themselves a fan, then yeah, they're a fan. They enjoy How to Train Your Dragon, just not to the obsession that I do. And on the flip side, I've only ever seen the movies for Lord of the Rings, not even The Hobbit. I haven't read them. I haven't read the Silmarillion. I don't know a ton about Tolkien, though I do love what I know of him. He's awesome. So just because I don't know a lick of Elvish doesn't mean I'm not a real Lord of the Rings fan. I'm just a casual fan, and there's nothing wrong with either. Trying to define what makes a real fan of something is rude, prideful, and frankly, kinda stupid, since the idea completely disrespects the fact that we do all have differing opinions and levels of passion. Anyway, let's get started. I hope my glasses aren't catching too much of the glare. We're gonna start with Instagram. Because Chris50 says, Spirit Tracks is a vastly overlooked installment in the franchise. It's my favorite title, save for Breath of the Wild. I got so many comments that had to do with the DS games, and I think that's really cool that a lot of people are showing them love. I personally have never played them, but what I've seen of them, they seem enjoyable. Yeah, they might have some tedious moments, but I really like the music for especially Spirit Tracks. So I can't personally say I have a specific opinion on it because I haven't played it. But I think it's great that so many people really enjoy them, and that's, you know, cool opinion to have. It is unpopular. I think a lot of people don't put Spirit Tracks or Phantom Hourglass that high up. There are a lot of games they like more, but hey, if it's your favorite, it's your favorite. Cool. Alan says the only thing that makes Ocarina of Time good is nostalgia. Maybe for you, but I think most of us, hence why it's an unpopular opinion, would say otherwise. If it's just not your favorite game, you know, it's not your favorite game. I don't think it's my favorite Zelda game. It's close, but not quite the top. It does hold a lot of nostalgia for a lot of us, but it is technically a very well done game. Yes, we always tend to include age, like of course the graphics are kind of different, but if it was made like that today with just updated graphics, it would still be considered a really good game, I think. So yeah, I disagree. I don't think nostalgia is the only thing that makes it good, because it had to have been good at the time. There wasn't nostalgia when it came out, so it's kind of different. Gus says, not considering master mode here, but it's frustrating how easy beating bosses has become, if not repetitive at times. I know this was a big deal in Breath of the Wild, and I don't think this is super unpopular. I guess it depends on which crowd of Zelda fans you're talking to. I think I'm indifferent to this. You know, like, I don't mind when they're easy, I don't like, how do I phrase this? I think I almost don't like it when I have to have real skills. Because I'm thinking of Thunderblight Ganon from Breath of the Wild. That's the one that takes the most skill out of all of them. And I get the most frustrated. But I can definitely see how that would be frustrating. You want to be challenged every time you get a new Zelda game. Whereas for me, I care more about music and story. But I do care about the gameplay, I guess just not as much. So, yeah. This one I thought was really interesting. Nick says the chime/xylophone sound effects that started with Wind Waker. They fit Wind Waker and maybe Skyward Sword, but those sound effects didn't fit Breath of the Wild, and definitely not Twilight Princess. It bugs me that those have become the default instruments for item gets, chest opens, and other actions. Likely a very unpopular opinion, or at the very least one people are indifferent toward, but something that is jarring for me and the first thing I thought of. Also, never heard of anyone else with this problem, so I feel like it's just me. I thought this was a really cool, unpopular opinion, and I think you're right. I don't think a lot of people think about it because music is a big deal to me, but I actually had never thought about this. It took me a minute to understand what you were trying to say until I watched someone play Twilight Princess and I heard that chime sound and went, oh my gosh, I know exactly what Nick's talking about. And I think I agree. I don't think it bothers me as much, but I know what you're saying and I think I agree. I think it does work for Breath of the Wild most of the time. But yeah, that was really interesting. That's not something a lot of people would think about. So yeah, that was cool. I told you there were a lot of these. Amanda says the DS games and Oracle games deserve a remake. Yeah, I would love that. I don't think the DS games should be the same way Link's Awakening was, but I think the Oracle games should be, in a sense. I mean, the remake of Link's Awakening wasn't perfect, of course not, but I really enjoyed it, and it definitely brought back a lot of memories when I was a lot younger and first played it on the Game Boy Color, so I played the DX version. I would love that. I know I'm not going to go back and play the Oracle games on my 3DS XL, you know, download the DS games or anything like that, so I would love it if they remade them. I would totally get them. So yeah, I agree. I don't know how unpopular that is. I think a lot of people are asking for it, but not as many people actually want it. Maybe? I don't know. Depends on which crowd you're in, I guess, but I would like that. Puggins. Puggins actually had like 3, but one of them, I couldn't help but read it and go, did you really play the game? Because if you played the game, you would know that's not true, and also it's not a problem anyway. And the other one, it was not an unpopular opinion like at all. Pretty much everyone thinks that. So the one I am reading though is the timeline should not split in Ocarina of Time. I thought that was an interesting comment, and I would like to know why you think that. Because while I'm not a huge fan of the downfall split, I thought it was kind of a cop-out. But I think it was Nintendo Black Crisis had a video where he explained where there could have been a different split somewhere else that would actually make everything fall in line still kind of how it does. It was interesting, but I haven't been able to fact check it yet. But it seemed interesting. Because as far as the time mechanics go for Ocarina of Time, that does make sense. Time travel in different franchises and fandoms and stories are always very different. So it's not like Back to the Future in Zelda where like, you know, because he went back to the past, now that future never exists. It does still exist, but in a different realm. I don't know. I always thought it made perfect sense. So I'm interested to know why you think it shouldn't split there, if you think it shouldn't split at all. Like, I don't know. There's probably a myriad of videos out there trying to show how it could be streamlined, although I think what they have makes decent sense thus far. I mean, it was all fanfare is why they made it, so yeah, interesting comment. Jona says, unpopular opinion, I love Wind Waker, but the first dungeon inside the Great Deku Tree is so frustrating. I think the first one's actually Dragon Roost Cavern, and I don't think the one you're talking about is in the Great Deku Tree, but is in the forest. So I know what you're talking about, but maybe I'm misreading. I don't know. Because they first give you a simple objective, go and recover the thing from the tree, then the Deku, I guess you mean Korok, gets lost because of sheer clumsiness, and you have to go get him, and of course he's lost at the end of the dungeon. The dungeon itself isn't bad. They make you think you're just passing by the island, and then it feels like they're dragging you along thanks to a branch boy. That was kind of funny. So I think I'm understanding what you're saying, and I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion, probably kind of like with Nick's comment, just not something people think about. I don't know, it never frustrated me, so that's interesting. Quentin says and asks, where is our remake of Zelda 2 and the Adventure of Link? Very different formula, and hard to be sure, but if you give it a true chance, it was actually a fun game. I can totally respect that. I think that'd be cool if they brought that. I don't know how they would remake it, but it would be interesting. I mean, we can play it, can we, on the Switch? Or is it just Zelda 1? I know we can play A Link to the Past with the SNES and NES online. Oh, I just hit my laptop. But I know a handful of people who really enjoy Zelda 2. I personally can't get into it because of the weird side-scrolling. Like, yes, it is just a different formula, but that's just, it's not because it's different from Zelda, like typical Zelda. That's not my problem. It's just, I don't like side-scrolling. That's why I never really got into the original Mario games and things like that. But that's just me personally, but hey, you're not alone. Unpopular opinion for sure, but you're not alone. There are others who would agree with you for sure. Justin actually had 2, and I'm going to read the second one. The first one was just as good, but I don't think it's as unpopular as this one. Breath of the Wild isn't the best Zelda game, but it's good. Definitely not in my top 3, but was super fun. See, this was, I think, one of the only very few, because there were a lot of comments about Breath of the Wild. They were just like, it stinks, and then it just sounded like a bunch of toddlers crying. Like, oh my gosh, like, what is wrong with you guys? Seriously. But this was like, you know, sounded like a rational comment. So yeah, I think that is kind of unpopular. A lot of people do really like Breath of the Wild. It's in my top 3, always fighting for first with Wind Waker. But I mean, that's a tough call to make. I love a lot of Zelda games, so there's that. But hey, I can respect that opinion. You enjoy the game, you think it's fun, not your favorite. Nothing wrong with that. Rhea says Ocarina of Time's time mechanic makes no sense and the tetraforce theory is cool. Starting with the latter, I also think the theory is kind of cool. I think the creators or directors of the games kind of said no, that absolutely not, definitely not a thing, which kind of like with movies and books now, I'm having less and less, I just don't trust their word anymore because they can retcon it at any point. So I'm like, until it's in or specifically dissed in a game, if you will, then whatever, it's still just a theory. And I do think it's a cool theory. So yeah, I agree with you there actually. I don't know how unpopular that is. As far as the time travel mechanic, I have to ask why, because it makes perfect sense to me. Maybe just because I grew up with it. Moving over to Discord, HyroGamer says that the pre-Breath of the Wild item systems are better than the item system we got in Breath of the Wild. I personally am indifferent to this. I don't think this is that unpopular, but yeah, I think I'm just indifferent to this. I don't really care one way or another. Aaron also says Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link was an enjoyable game. Fair enough. Moving over to YouTube, Adam, you can read the whole comment here. I'm gonna kind of read highlights of it. It's a good comment. He writes good comments. I may have said this before, but one of the main reasons I love The Legend of Zelda is the storyline for the games, which also a big deal for me. But then he says that he was disappointed with the story in Breath of the Wild. I don't think that's actually a very unpopular opinion. Maybe on my channel it might be unpopular, just because I do like the story, and I think someone has a comment about this later where it works. It's like with the music. It works for the type of game Breath of the Wild is. I would love bigger music. I would love a bigger story, but it makes sense for the game. But totally, you know, a lot of people didn't enjoy it. They wanted more, and I totally get that. And hopefully we'll get it in Breath of the Wild too, so. Daniel Lord says, Skyward Sword is my favorite in this series. I'm a big RPG fan and and Skyward Sword has many elements of RPG, such as a more linear story, for sure. It's more linear in a story-based narrative. I read that wrong. It's more linear in a story-based narrative opposed to the more free exploration, simple-ish approach to Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker. Included a strong cast of well-rounded characters, lots of personality. So he talks about like how it has a lot of elements of a good RPG. I'm actually not an RPG fan, as far as I can tell. Yeah, definitely an unpopular opinion for Skyward Sword to be a favorite, unless you know Miss Click. She loves Skyward Sword. That's another game I have yet to play, but I've been watching playthroughs and it looks so fun. My problem is I'm left-handed and it's motion control. That's why I can't play Twilight Princess on the Wii. I can't play the Wii version because it's motion control and I'm left-handed. A lot of left-handers didn't have a problem with that. I just did. That's my reason for not playing. Alan, Sushi, says Breath of the Wild is widely overrated. I think you're just trying to make a pun. If I know you, I think you're just trying to make a pun. I'm like pretty sure. The Aussie Viking, the music in Breath of the Wild is some of the best in the series, and he gives lots of examples. Definitely an unpopular opinion. Like I was mentioning earlier, I think it fits what Breath of the Wild is, and they did it very well. The Hyrule Castle thing outside and in is obviously our big, majestic themes, but there were a lot of themes I liked. They're not epic, but they're really good to listen to, kind of just in the background, soft, calm, and there are ones from other Zelda games like that too. But it fit what it was, and I don't think it's my favorite in this series, so I differ with you there, but I do think they're awesome, so cool. A Plumber to the Past says very unpopular opinion, and yes it is. I thought Triforce Heroes was a great game. The boss fights were great, the costumes were really cool, and the usage of 3 people was a fun idea. A lot of people say it is too silly or ridiculous for a Zelda game, but I think that is because it was aimed towards a younger audience. Compared to games like Twilight Princess and Majora's Mask, I enjoyed the game even with that silly plot and costumes, and I'd say that made the game almost better. Fair, I can't argue with that, honestly. I don't like the idea of Triforce Heroes for the same reason I don't like the idea of 4 Swords and 4 Swords Awakening. I don't like the multiple links multiplayer thing. That's just me, because I kind of want to just play it on my own, typically. I don't like that it's in the timeline. I don't like that it's official lore. I also don't like the silliness of it, not that there's not silliness in Zelda. I wouldn't say it's not a real Zelda game, because it is. It's just a very different kind of Zelda game. It's still Zelda. Hylian Sushi says, I kind of like the Breath of the Wild story. I feel like if there had been more story in the game, it would just feel wrong. Yes, a lot of Zelda games have a cool story, but I think it's fine for a Zelda game to have a less focus on narrative. To be honest, I wouldn't have cared if there had been a little bit less story, but I'm still hoping that Breath of the Wild has a good narrative. We'll have a good narrative. I agree. Definitely unpopular opinion, but I agree. I think the story is great for what it is. Yes, I would have liked more. Yes, I would have liked to be able to connect with those characters who were dead by the time you see the memories, because they're memories. I would like to interact with them more, but I liked where they went with it, and I think it worked for what kind of game Zelda Breath of the Wild was. So yeah, I agree. Super Link says the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time is not a hard dungeon, and aside from the boss fight, is one of the best dungeons in Ocarina of Time. I agree about the boss fight. I don't like the boss fight. But I did find it hard, not just because I was young, but because it was confusing. I don't know why, because I normally like puzzle stuff like that, but for me, I did find it confusing. I think a lot of people's issues, though, their issue is not difficulty of water dungeons. It's tediousness. Yeah, how tedious some of the mechanics are. Steven says, I don't think it's so horrible when people don't realize that Zelda is the princess, not the hero. Especially if they're younger. Especially if they're younger. I can get that. If you don't know Zelda is a female name. I think you're probably bringing up the point that people freak out about it, and yes, it is annoying if you've been playing for a while. But you're right, though. It's not that big of a deal. Just tell them, oh no, Link's the hero, Zelda's the princess. I think you make a good point with that. Oh my goodness, that was interesting and turned out to be way more fun than I thought. I was kind of worried. There were a lot of, like, just rude comments, but there were still plenty of awesome ones to read from, and it was really interesting how many of them overlapped too, especially the DS game ones. But what do y'all think? Should I do more of these? Let me know. If you're new here, maybe consider checking out some of my other videos and possibly subscribing. I don't know. By the way, I know I have not uploaded for quite some time. Like, it's been a couple of weeks, which is the longest hiatus I think I've ever had. So, let's just say it's been a time. It's been a time and a half. So, thank you for joining me on live streams or over on my Instagram in the interim. Needless to say, more videos are coming and I'm very, very excited. So, anyway, that's all for today. Thank you for watching.